Okay guys, so today we're going to start talking about ordering decimals. In this case, we're ordering them from least to greatest. So what I like to do is whenever I have a problem, I like to highlight how I'm ordering them. And if it's least to greatest, I also like to write it down just because it helps with memory. Least to greatest. Okay. Usually, if it's a word problem, I like to write down least and then the arrow and the G, because that kind of makes a note of it, of what it's asking in the problem. Okay, so least to greatest is what we're doing right here. A couple things that I'm going to show you that are strategies, because even though these seem very simple and they start off very simple, we can make some mistakes often if we don't do some steps just to ensure that we don't make those mistakes. So the first step is to go ahead and rewrite the numbers. Okay, we have four numbers here: 1.5, 1.5, dot, 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 which in this case means repeating, 1.08, and 2.3. So the first step would be to write those down. Vertically and line up the decimals. Okay. Alright, so there we go. We lined up all the decimals. Now here's when we want to make sure that we are neat, because sometimes, I know it kind of sounds ridiculous, but if I was to accidentally do something like this, then this 3, is it lined up with the 5? Is it lined up with the 8? Sometimes we make small mistakes like that. So make sure that you are neat when you're doing this. And one thing that helps us be neat can be grid paper, and which you guys can use in the STAR test. So grid paper helps a lot. It's got all the little squares, so you can write the numbers in there. If you have grid paper in a composition book, something like that, that helps you kind of organize your numbers if you need that organization. Not everyone does, okay? So the first thing is, we like to think about these numbers as money. And so you see 1.555 repeating, right? Well, if I'm thinking about money, then that means that I really only need these two place values behind the decimal. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this 5 to round. Okay, so remember, if I want to stop at the hundredths place, I'm going to use the thousandths place to round to the hundredths place. So remember, the saying goes, 5 or more, add 1 more, 4 or less, let it rest. Okay, so what that means is, if this number here, if it is 5 or higher, you're going to add 1 more to the number you're rounding to. If it's 4 or less, you can leave it alone. Okay, so in this case, it's 5 or more, so I'm going to add 1 more to the 5 next to it. So I'm going to take this 5, and that tells me to round up. So then this 5 becomes a 6. Okay, so I rounded that one up. Remember, that was 1.5 repeating. All right, the next step is then to make sure all of the numbers have the same amount of digits. So I'm going to add a 0 there and a 0 there. Now they all look like money. Okay. Now remember, we're going from least to greatest. So a lot of times when these look like money, it kind of makes it a lot easier for me to kind of understand how to compare them. I'm looking for the lowest one to go first. Okay. Remember, we kind of, just like we read, we go from left to right. So let's look at the ones place first. So in the ones place, we have these numbers here, right? Now, if I look at those numbers, I have 3 ones and a 2. Well, I know if I'm going from least to greatest, that number with a 2, so this number here, 2.3, is going to be the highest one, the greatest one, right? If I'm going from least to greatest, then that's going to be my last number, my fourth number. So now I can just really just focus on those other 3. They're all 1 point something, right? So now I can, because all of these 3 here have 1 point something, I can almost ignore that now. And if I just look at the numbers that I have left, I have 50, 56, and 8. So it makes it a little bit easier to compare those. One of the mistakes that we make sometimes is we think of this one here as 5, right? And we think 5 is less than 8. But remember, when we add that 0 there, it's easier to see that it's 50, and then we have 56 and 8. Okay, so remember, I'm going from least to greatest, so the lowest number out of those three is 8. So that means that 1.08, that's my lowest number. And then we have 50 and 56. 50 is lower than 56. That makes 56 3. And then again, the 2.30, that's the highest one. Okay, so there's our numbers in order from least to greatest. So then I'm just going to rewrite them again. I'm going to try to write them a little small. And I'm going to say 1.5. I'm sorry, 1.08 is my first number. Then we have 1.5. Then 1.5 repeating. And then 2.3. This is my set of numbers ordered from least to greatest. Okay? Hopefully that helps.